There are many paths. Path of wisdom, the path of service. But the path of love is something very special. It's a path that seems dangerous because you're sort of stepping all the way in. It's a commitment. It's not passive. The path of love is a feminine path. It's much like a mother, where she puts the child before herself. And we have that ability within each of us. Otherwise, our species would never have survived. So there's a core quality within us that is our undercurrent. The problem is, in a sense, we grow in a way that we separate ourselves, in a sense, from that pool of love that is always there. And one of the best ways that we can hold ourselves back or disguise the love that's there, or to keep away from it, in a sense, hold it at bay, is we use comparison. We start to compare. There's a core that we know within us that we've been taught that we're somehow deficient. And in our deficiency, we look for confirmation of our deficiency. We don't look for our strengths, we look for our weaknesses so we can hide them and cover them up. The path of love exposes that. And that's dangerous. Because that means a total acceptance. To walk the path of love, you're going to have to accept yourself exactly the way you are. And in that acceptance, now you have something to give. The path of love is a path of giving as opposed to receiving. You will receive, granted, but it's a path of giving. Just as the mother gives to the child, the path of love requires that, in a sense, we disappear into the path so that the ego and the identity that's Christopher dissolves, and what is left is my undercurrent, the love that I actually am, that each of us actually is. When we feel love, what does it feel like? Safety, warmth, security, at ease, okayness. It's not like stars and fireworks and everything else. Love has a warmth to it, a serenity to it, a peace to it. The rest of what we call love is lust, which is beautiful. That's the heat, that's the fire, that's the aliveness. That's the mud in which the lotus grows. Because it grows out of the mud. It grows out of the earthiness of lust. Lust is a powerful energy. We're born out of sex. We are sex. Yeah, that's another part where we sort of suppress. When lust has its flowering, it flowers and grows into the lotus. It grows out of the mud. It flowers as love. And we get that all very confused. So the path of love really is concerned with the other. And I'm going to start with the story of the Chinese woman. And in China, as in a lot of the Asian countries, they would support the monks. And so this particular woman built a hut for this monk and fed him for 20 years. And she said, I wonder how the old guy's doing. I haven't seen him. I don't know whether he's attained to enlightenment, because the idea was that you'd support somebody in meditation, they would flower, and they would know enlightenment, they would know love, and that would pass on to the village and to the community. So she thought, well, I'll go into town and I'll get one of those the lady, I know just the perfect woman who is rich in amorous desire, and invite her to go up and to talk with the monk, to enter his hut and to perhaps caress him and to see what's going to happen. So she enlisted the woman. She went up. She came back and reported. And the old woman said, well, what happened? Well, I entered his hut. I started kissing him and caressing him. And then I said, what's next? And he shook his head and he said, I am an old tree growing on a cold rock. There is no warmth here. It's time for you to go. And she said, I've never felt so insulted. He was horrible. That wasn't a man. That was a corpse. And the old woman said, I knew it. I have wasted 20 years feeding that old fool and nothing has happened. He hasn't flowered. And the old woman said, you know, there was 3 possibilities. First, nothing had happened in his spiritual life. He was still a man. And so he would have taken you and made love to you. That would have been preferable to what happened. He became a mind and an ego. That was the second possibility. And he had foregone love. He had pushed it so far down that he had died inside. The third possibility would mean that he followed the path of love and he had flowered, meaning when you came in, he would have said, hello, welcome. You have come a long way to see an old man. How can I help you? What's on your mind? Can I be of assistance? But no, he did none of that. The path of love is concerned with the other. Puts the other first. And as you can see from the story, the monk had just become an ego. Had basically died. And if we look, you know people in your life that have died, that have become so protected, so sheltered, so self-centered in a way, and not the good kind of self-centered, that they're incapable of warmth. The path of love warms us up. And as the story goes, the next day the woman went up and burned the hut down of the monk. And she laughed all the way home. I love that story. Because unless there's a flowering, and that's each of our opportunity, is the flowering, the fragrance. The path of love does not grow plastic flowers. It grows fragile, tender flowers that need to be nurtured. And that's where the scariness comes in. And that's where the vulnerability comes in. And that's why it's a difficult path. Better to try the path of service, the path of wisdom, all of the other paths. But the path of love is you jump in with 2 feet. And in this next story, there was a woman who had missed her train in New York, and she was on the platform. It was 12 o'clock at night in an unsavory neighborhood, and she could see a bunch of kids, teenagers, about 8 of them coming up the stairs. And she said, I can smell, I can feel trouble. So she ran from the platform, went down, and went into a phone booth. That's back then. And there was at least a light on inside, and she felt a little bit safe in the phone booth until they surrounded the phone booth, leering and making comments. And she thought, oh my, how am I going to get out of this? There's nobody else around. I'm terrified. Terrified. And just then, as she tells the story, an angel appeared. And he sounded like this, just a middle-aged guy. Damn it, Susan, where were you? I've been looking for you everywhere. What are you doing in the phone booth? We're going to miss our train. Come with me right now. As he burst through the kids, that opened up the phone booth, grabbed her arm, pulled her out, and continued to berate her for leaving. Well, we know that she'd never seen him before, but she saved him. He continued up to the platform where he was with her until she got her train. She never got his name. That's love. That's the path of love in action, because love is action. That man didn't think about, well, gee, I see this situation. What should I do? Because when you start thinking about it, it's too late in a sense. Because if you really thought it out logically, well, no, I could be hurt in this situation. There could be 1,000 different possibilities. Why would I want to endanger myself? Blah, 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 blah. The path of love propels us into where it can do the most good. We are used in this, we could say we are used by that power within us. That connective power of love moves us to where we can do the best and the highest good. And so he jumped in, and he was clever and powerful and committed. Both feet were in this, and it turned out beautifully. This is what we can do, in a sense, when we don't think. Because if he was thinking, he probably wouldn't have done it. You know, when you're in an emergency situation, I know I've been in several times where I just burst in. There was a fire one time. There was a car accident where I wasn't thinking of myself. Something literally propelled me in to be to be helpful. Just to be helpful. And I can't think of a better thing we can do with our lives than to be helpful to one another. Mm. I know for me, the best experience is when I know that I've made a difference with somebody else. When you've made a difference with your kids at school, when you've helped someone and you didn't need to, and maybe they didn't even thank you, but you knew that you did the right thing. And there was an upliftment with that. And it seems like as I give, it goes out, and dang it if it doesn't boomerang right back. It returns, and I don't know how it works and how that, but it seems like I'm always enriched when I give. So in a sense, it's getting out of the way. Kabir talks about this. He said, when I was a seeker and I was seeking for love, I couldn't find love. Love was nowhere to be found. And when I found love, the seeker was nowhere to be found. Something had happened. It seems that the seeker and love cannot exist together. The seeker is the mind. It thinks it knows what it's looking for. And in a sense, it's the very barrier. It's the grasping for something. And when we let go of the grasping, and when we let go of our self-centeredness and just move to the current of life, we absolutely know what to do. We know what's kind. We know what's thoughtful. We know what's generous. And so in being that, this is the path of love. But in a sense, I have to get out of the way. My seeking, my self-centeredness, my sense of control needs to kind of go on a back burner. It won't go away, I guarantee it. Mm-hmm. That'll always be with you. but it's more like putting the other as a forefront. How can I get out of my own way? The barriers, again, are comparison and judgment. There was a crooked tree, and the crooked tree was in this forest of straight trees, beautifully tall, straight trees. And this one crooked tree, she was so sad because she knew she was crooked. And she knew that being crooked was not a good thing. She was deficient. And every day, she was in woe. Until the lumberjacks came through and cut down all of the rest of the trees. And she found herself with nothing to compare herself to. And as she looked around, she saw the forest for what it was. Where she was a part of a whole. And she was so convinced of her own crookedness and her own self-centeredness, she couldn't see everything. And when it was gone, she saw the landscape. She started realizing that there was birds starting to build nests in her branches. She could see that her seeds would be cast on the wind and to populate the forest again, and that she had value. And without comparison, she no longer could see herself as crooked. That mirror was taken away from her. We have mirrors that we hold up to ourselves. When we take those mirrors away, we're no longer crooked. We are as we are. And that's our gift. That's our absolute gift to the world, is exactly what and who we are. And we're not deficient. Even though the mind will say something to the contrary, if we question the mind, are we truly deficient? Or is that just a thought? Just a thought, and the only power that thought has is the power that I give it. And so, on the path of love, what can we offer? And what is ours to offer on the path of love? Besides our tenderness and our heartfulness, we can offer each other attention. And that we can offer our listening, the quality of our listening. And we're having a community meeting coming up. In that meeting, each of us can bring quality of listening. We can bring our attention, and we can look to what is the good of the whole rather than what's the good for me. Mm-hmm. The path of love, again, is more concerned with the whole than it is with the me. And we're going to leave you with that. Let us pray. Mm-hmm. And let's take a breath together, and to drop in again to this moment. And as we drop deep into this moment, we drop into the current of love, that which is continuously flowing, has never started and has never ceased. And from this present moment, in deep appreciation, we look at our crookedness for the first time with a new eye, an eye that tells us that we're no longer deficient, that was a trick of the mind, that there is nothing else to compare us to, that we are whole and complete as we are when we take away that simple comparison, and that who we are is our magic, is our gift, is our beauty. And this is what we offer to the whole world. And so let us take each other's hands as we walk the path of love together, as we move gracefully from being seekers to those who have actually found love, who have released the fragrance of love. And so it is.
Mm-hmm.